So we covered cassava base this morning and a little bit of the afternoon. So for the rest of the day, we're going to talk about Fieldbook and how it integrates with cassava base and how you can use it to collect data out in the field. And then tomorrow, we're going to go out to the field and collect some data, show how barcodes can be integrated into Fieldbook as well. And then when we come back, we'll talk about the rest of the apps that are within that Pheno apps suite of apps as well. So just to get kind of a perspective, how many people here have used Fieldbook? All right, so I don't have to do anything. Like, that's easy. Hopefully, you'll all learn something new. I really hope. If not, just ask questions, give me ideas, tell me what's wrong. But we all know the challenge today, and it's worse with crops like cassava, where there hasn't been long-term investment into improving the production. So the food demand is expected to increase by 50%, and phenotyping is a bottleneck for plant breeders and geneticists all over the world. But we really have this opportunity with mobile phones and tablets that most people are either have or are quickly getting. The smartphone adoption rate in Africa it's astounding, to be honest. Many people's first phones are smartphones, and I mean, I think the rate of adoption, just the acceleration is higher than a lot of developed countries, which is just absolutely impressive. So we can use those tools in plant breeding and genetics as a means to collect data. And when we think about plant breeding, we really have 3 different steps, and this is all crops, regardless of species. So this project started as non-cassava related, and I kind of got wrapped into it. So my background isn't so much in the clonally propagated crops, but even this still applies. So we select the lines that we want, we cross those lines to generate novel allelic combinations, and then over a long period of time, we evaluate those for phenotypic performance in the field to feed back into our next round of selections. And when looking at this, it really makes sense to target the longest and the most arduous step for these tools to collect data. And so in 2012, we decided to create Fieldbook. I kind of want to go off on a tangent and say that the work that the cassava base group has done is absolutely astounding. That entire software suite, if you were to buy the commercial tools, is in the thousands of dollars conservatively. But it didn't start out that way. Like, nothing does, especially in software. And that's the biggest thing with what we do, is that we iterate based on the demand and the response from the people using the software. And so to put this into perspective for Fieldbook, this was the first version of Fieldbook in 2012. And it's ugly. Like, it's really ugly. And people used it. It was amazing how many people went through the painstaking process of utilizing the software. And we iterated on that, made a lot of improvements. It's still not beautiful, but more usable. And then slowly getting into that spot where it actually looks like a piece of software that you might want to use. So talking about Fieldbook, just kind of giving a quick summary. It's an app for phenotypic data collection that lets you navigate between different plots or traits. One of the powerful things about Fieldbook is that it shows you extra plot information depending on which entry you're on. You can also manage the traits within the app itself. So you can change the order, you can disable or enable which traits you want to collect at a given time. And it's really powerful since it has different layouts and formats depending on what kind of trait you want to collect, which makes it highly customizable. And this number at the bottom is really what always gets me. Oh, we have a mic. Can you hear me in the back? All right, I'll just leave it there then. Because I recycle slides like any good scientist does, and I always have to update this number. I was in Uganda in November, and it was 4,800. Like, between November and now, we've had that many downloads. And in September, it was 3,200. It's the amount of people who are wanting and using these tools just blows my mind. And Next Gen Cassava was one of the first groups to adopt and integrate these tools. So anyone that was using this back in 2013 are really just trust what they say, because they know where things are going. So for this workshop, I really wanted to go step by step on how to use Fieldbook, and then talk about some of the components, the aspects of how to get the most utility out of the app itself. So the first step for us is going to be to design our field in Cassava Base, which is what we did. Once we have that field created, we can export that to a file along with the traits that we're going to be collecting. And we'll transfer that file to the phone and tablet. We'll import that file into Fieldbook, create or import traits. In this case, we'll be importing the traits, collect our data, export our data, and upload it to Cassava Base. And so everybody here is going to do that, because we brought 30 smartphones. So we'll walk through all of these steps together. If you've used Fieldbook before and you're sitting next to someone who hasn't, you can help them out along the way. You'd be one of the trainers of the trainers. And it's going to be an interesting process and hopefully really fun, hopefully useful. But we'll get to see kind of the ins and outs of using Fieldbook. All right, so the first thing we have to worry about is transferring the files from the computer to the phones. So go ahead and plug your phone into your computer. Okay, so several years ago, Google, just to go on like this nerd tangent, Google within Android decided to make it really hard to transfer files because you have to take 2 or 3 extra steps versus just plugging it in like a flash drive. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to open and unlock the phone. That would have been smarter. And scroll down from the top. So there should be an option for the USB charging at the very bottom. It might be at the top. It's different between devices and everything. Now we're going to select that. We're going to change that to transfer files. Okay, so the goal of this slide is to scroll down, see this, select USB charging, view this window, click on the Transfer Files button, and be at this stage. Now, if anyone has problems, raise your hand. I know we have some people who have been through all of this before that hopefully will be willing to help. Okay, so phone's down. We're going to go back to slides. So looking at a file, a field file in this case, Fieldbook really requires 3 different components. And these are all provided by Cassava Base. But in this example, we have our plot ID, or the furthest left column. We have our row and our plot. Now our plot ID is our unique identifier. So everything that we're taking data on needs to be uniquely identified. That's so that we can assign data to that unique thing. The other 2 columns that we have selected here, row and plot, really are used for organization within the app to help you navigate through the field or the greenhouse or whatever you're doing just more easily. Okay, so once our device is connected to our computer, Within the My Computer, or if you're on I don't use Macs, so however you browse flash drives and those kind of things on Macs. We'll have our device show up. We can select that device. The next option is going to be this internal shared storage. And so within this folder structure is where you'll be transferring your files to, retrieving data from. So once Fieldbook has been opened on your phone, this Fieldbook folder will be created. And when we have our file to import, we'll transport that to field import. And so in this case, we don't all have the file from the field that we're going to tomorrow. And so we're going to skip that step and pretend that we transferred the file. Fortunately, Fieldbook comes with a bunch of other sample files so that we can play around with the app itself.